Hello all, this is Liji and today I'll be explaining decision making structures in Python. Usually when we execute a code, it is executed one step after other. A sequential execution happens. That is instruction 1 is executed after 2 and then 3, then 4, like that. But there may be scenarios when we have to decide whether to execute step 3 or step 4 based on a condition. So that is we need to make a decision over there. Let us take an example. Consider an ATM machine. An end user is coming to withdraw the money. Suppose sometimes he may check his balance. First he will check his balance, then he will decide to withdraw money. There will be another user who will just come, who deposits money and goes. He doesn't check the balance, he doesn't withdraws money. A third user comes, he just withdraws the money, he doesn't check any balance. So there are multiple scenarios happening over here when you have to make decide which set of lines of code to be executed based on how the end user is behaving. So to handle such scenarios, we need to have these decision making structures. So the decision making structures are those structures that help to us to make some decision and follow a particular sequence of execution, how based on some conditions. So that's what we are going to see today. In case of Python, decision making is done using the structure if. It is just a simple if statement. Based on that, we can make the decisions. So now let us see one scenario. The first scenario is we need to check whether a number is even, and then we have to print whether the number is even. Okay, so how can we check if a number is even? A number is even only if it is divisible by 2. Divisible by 2 means the remainder, once the division is done, the remainder will be 0. So that is the condition over there. If the remainder is 0, we can print the message, yes, it's an even number. Okay, so that is a simple thing that we have handled over here. We have entered the number. So here we are entering the number. Since input always returns a string, we are converting it to an integer, and then it is assigned to the variable num. So three things are happening over here: user input, conversion to appropriate data type, and then variable assignment. Okay, so now the num will be having the number entered by the user. And now what we are checking here, if num modulus operator 2, that is we are doing an integer division over here and then we are taking the remainder. Okay, and that remainder is compared here. Since there are two equal sign, it means compared. So the remainder is compared and we are checking whether if it is equal to 0. So if num modulus operator 2 is equal to 0, okay, then what we have to do, we have to print that it is an even number. So that is what is happening over here. Okay, so we'll just execute that and see. 6, it's printing even number. Okay, now let me execute something. Let me enter 7. It doesn't print anything because it is not divisible by 2, right? And there is and this statement will only be executed when this statement is true. Okay, so if you can see, if you can notice, there is a slight indentation to the right over here. Okay, which means that this is a part of this if structure. Okay, and the syntax of if you see here, it is if, and then we are checking for an expression, and then there is a colon over here which indicates that no, the if is not over, I have some statements with it and it is coming as a block. Okay, so this print is a part of if. It will be executed only if this is true. Okay, that is why when we entered 7, no output came. And suppose now I am having a statement over here, print. Okay, this statement, since it is aligned towards the left and it is not part of any structure, it will be printed, it will be executed all the time. So let me execute it once. 6, it printed even number because it is divisible by 2, and then it printed I am a number. Now if I enter 7 over here, it just prints I am a number because this condition of if is not true. And since it is not true, this statement print even number, this statement is not executed. I hope it's clear now. Let us understand block and indentation in a much better way with this example. Just give me a second. Okay. Block and indentation. Okay, so here what we are doing, we are getting a number and we are checking if it is 0, and if, as you can notice, these three statements are aligned towards right. That means it forms a part of this if structure. Okay, so this forms a block. Okay, this is a block and it's a part of this if structure, and it is intended towards right. So when a set of statements is a part of some structure like if, or we'll be seeing other structures, similar structures, then it becomes forms a block and it will be intended towards right. Indentation is very important in Python. Okay, so let us execute this. So I'm entering 1. So what all things should be executed? It should execute, it should print am a number and the base of everything. Let us see that. Yes, it had printed I am a number and base of everything. It didn't execute any of these statements because these statements will be executed only if the number is 0. Now let us enter 0 and see. 0, all the messages are printed over here like I am 0, I am nothing, without me maths is not possible. Then it had executed I am a number and I am the base of everything. Now let us just this statement I am just allowing it to left. Okay, now let me enter 1 again. Okay, see, now it executed this statement also because it is aligned towards left. Now it is not forming a part of this block if block, and because of that it executed this statement also. Without me maths is not possible. Got it? So that is all about blocks and indentation. Now coming back to decision making structures. Here we saw a simple scenario when you are checking for a condition and you are printing some message. Okay, we saw a very simple condition over here. Now let us see the same scenario in a much elaborated manner. So we need to check whether the number is even, and then we have to print whether it is even or not. Okay, so we check the divisible. We'll divide the number by 2, and if the remainder is 0, we'll print yes, it's an even number, and in all other cases it is odd, right? So if the remainder is not 0, means it is an odd number. So that is what is being handled over here. We are entering the number, then we are checking if the number, its remainder is 0. In that case, we are printing even number. Else, we are printing it's an odd number. Means when this statement is not true, or when this is false, then it will just come to this else box. This is again another block actually. We are opening a block. If you notice the colon over here, this is another block. It comes to this block and it will execute this statement. Okay, so when this condition is true, it will just execute this statement, and if this condition is not true, it will just directly come to this else part and it will print this statement. So let us see it once again. So I'm entering 6, it printed even number. I'm entering 7, it printed odd number. So this condition is checked. When it is false, it came here and it printed odd number for me. Now let us think of a third scenario in which you need to check whether the number is 0. If it is 0, you have to print yes, this is 0. And if it is not 0, you have to check whether it is even or not. That is a requirement that we have. So what should happen? First, it should check whether if it is 0. If it is 0, you should print that message. Then you don't have to do anything. Okay. If it is not 0, in that case, you again have to check whether if it is even or odd. Okay. So that is what we are doing here. First, we are checking if the number is 0. Okay, if number is 0, we are printing that. Otherwise, We are checking whether it is divisible by 2. If it is so, then we are printing even number, else we are printing odd number. Okay, so this elif means else if. Else if will be executed only if the previous, this condition is false, then only this else, that is else. And if this condition is false, else, then if we are checking again, it is else if. It is elif is a shorthand notation of else if. Okay, so elif, then we are checking this. So I am entering 0, it will just print 0. Okay, I am entering 4, it will print even number. And entering 7, it will print odd number. So depending on the number it is executing that particular statement that is associated to that block. Okay, now suppose this el was not here. Okay, then what happens? I enter 0, it prints 0 and even number. See, that is because when we divide 0 by 2, obviously the remainder also comes as 0, right? So that is why we got it as even number. But that was not what we wanted, right? We need to print it as 0, and if it is not 0, then only we have to print check for the even number. That's why we had elif. So elif statement will be executed only if this statement is false. So yes, now when I make enter 0, only 0 will be printed. Okay. Now there may be scenarios in which you need to execute all the statements to do multiple check for multiple conditions. Like if the number is divisible by 2, 3 and 5. I want to check whether a number is divisible by 2, 3 and 5. Suppose at sample 60, I want to print it is divisible by 2, it is divisible by 3 and it is divisible by 5. I want to print that. Okay, so in that case what can be done? See, I'm entering 60 over here. So divisible by 2, divisible by 3, divisible by 5. So here what we are doing is we are checking whether it's divisible by 2, then we are checking whether it's divisible by 3, then we are checking it's divisible by 5, and we are printing it. Because I wanted where I wanted to check all the three conditions and then print it. Okay, it is not, there is nothing like if it's divisible by 2, then I don't have to check for the divisible by 3 and 5. No, nothing like that. My requirement was I wanted to check for all these conditions. So that is why we just use if you go for elif and else, it will execute only when the initial if condition is false. But I wanted to check all conditions, that's why we just use if and if. Okay, so those are the different usage scenarios for a decision making structure. If statement, if only one condition is there, obviously we go for if statement. Okay, or we use multiple if statements when the result of the previous condition is not dependent on the execution of the second condition. Okay, so we have a second condition. If the result of the previous statement is not dependent on this, then we go for if statements. We use elif when we only if the previous condition, when we want something to check for something when the previous condition is false. In that case we use an elif statement. So elif statements always follow is always follow always preceded by a if statement. Okay, and else it will be executed when none of the condition is true. None of the condition given above is true, then else statement will executed. So we use else as to print a final message when the none of the conditions given above is true. So else is always preceded by either a if or an elif. But if can stand alone. So that is the difference between if, elif and else. So today we have covered sequential statements and branching, blocks and indentation, if else, if elif else, if, and we see many usage scenarios. So that's all for today. This is me, Liji, signing off. Keep practicing because only practice can make you a perfect coder. Thank you all. Bye.